I'm Stephanie Fattman. I'm the Register of Probate. I oversee the Probate and Family Court for Worcester County, so all 60 cities and towns in Worcester County. We handle matters such as divorce, child support, child custody, and then of course probating estates when people pass away. And so we've created this presentation to give you some tips and tricks on ways to avoid the probate and family court or be prepared for the probate and family court, let you know a little bit about the court system before you come in. And a lot of our work overlaps with Katie Toomey, Register of Deeds. We're both elected officials in our community, in the county, and we like to get out here and let you know a bit about our offices and what we can do to help. And so our offices do overlap, and we've joined up to create this presentation that we've brought to senior centers to let you know about both of our offices.
So yeah, I'm Katie. About a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, I get a call from Stephanie, and we knew each other. We both are attorneys, and we kind of run in similar circles. But she says, I'm going to the Milford Senior Center. Milford's a lot of miles from here. And I'm getting a lot of questions about deeds and some inquiries, and can you give me some information? And I said, oh no, I'm coming to making the road trip. So this is how we were kind of thrown together, and it was born. But you know, I was very grateful that Stephanie's let me kind of get on her coattails a year and a half, 2 years ago, and it's kind of flowed from that. We don't bother with a PowerPoint presentation because honestly, our offices are so huge, and everybody that comes to these different things, depending on whatever part of the county we're in, have vastly different lives, vastly different questions, and totally different experiences in family life. So we kind of play it by ear. So we really encourage a lot of questions. For the purposes of videotaping this for the town public access, if you have a question, we'll try to repeat it so that it's being repeated because you're not on camera. But we want to just make sure that we get anything covered that you might have. And we can stay for a minute or two after if you want, if you have a question you don't want to ask the general public. So as Stephanie introduced me, I'm the Register of Deeds. I represent a slightly smaller district than her. I only represent 55 cities and towns. But I am the record keeper of all the land and title documents dating back to April 2nd, 1731. So all of our documents are available online back to April 2nd, 1731, and you can go back to book 1, page 1 when we broke off from Middlesex County. So prior to that, the documents would be in Cambridge, Massachusetts. But for the purposes of this, we're here as a resource. We're both state officials, we're both state office holders, and we're here as a resource for you guys to see what you may want to do. Some people have questions about the homestead law, some people have questions about consumer notification, and a lot of questions that when we come to this thing is a little bit geared towards Stephanie with regards to probate. And I love when she starts out, and she's going to start out and tell you about your will as a roadmap.
Certainly so. To piggyback on Katie, your estate plan is really unique to you. And so everybody has different family circumstances, you have different financial circumstances, you have different goals and wishes, and you have different ideas on how you want your assets to pass. And so one of the first things we encourage you to do is draft a will and start putting together your estate administration documents. So your will is that first one. That would be the roadmap. How do your assets pass? And it's very important when an estate is being probated, if there's a will, that we have the original will in court. That's how the court can determine where the assets will go. And the original will must be witnessed by 2 people, notarized and signed, and then that's the document the court will take and help determine where your assets pass. We want you to consider for example, with your will, where are you putting these important documents? And so often what we see in probate and family court, people will come in and they'll have their will put in a safe deposit box. And that's not helpful because you can't get to the safe deposit box without probating the estate first. And so it's kind of backwards in the process. So taking these important documents and having conversations with your family members, letting your family members know where these documents are, putting them in something like a safe in your house. You can get a safe at Walmart, put it in your closet, and put all these important documents in that safe so that your family members know where they can get them. Having that prepared and steps ahead and having the conversations with your loved ones really helps avoid some of the problems and confusion in probate court. We also see in probate court, you're coming in because you need to try to access assets that you can't otherwise get to. So any property you have that's going to pass directly to a named individual, a beneficiary, something like a life insurance policy or a 401k, those will pass to a beneficiary and they're not probate property. Probate would be something like a bank account. You're the only name on the bank account. Your loved ones can't go in and say, I want access to my mom's bank account, she's passed away. That person has to go to the probate and family court. They have to come, they get letters of authority from us that starts the whole probate process, and that's how the individual can get access to those assets. So again, pointing back to the roadmap of your will, you can list in your will where you want those assets to go and how you want them to pass, and then hopefully this presentation triggers you to think proactively about the assets you do have and where you want them to go and how you want them to pass to individuals. Are there banks that you have access to right now that allow you to name a beneficiary on the bank account? We see that. Some banks will let you fill out a form and have a beneficiary. Some people, depending on your family situation, might want to put another individual on the bank account. Those are different ways you can start thinking through the assets you have and how they would pass and how you can avoid probate court with those assets.
So your largest asset generally is if you're a homeowner. Most people, you know, we have a lot of liquid assets, but a lot of people say, well, what about my house? Does that go through probate? And that's where the ginormous beast of this conversation comes out is there's different ways to do it. And the first and foremost way, and I think the baby step would be to contact a lawyer and draft a will. I think it's in your best interest to kind of call all your information and kind of get your ducks in a row, so to speak. And a lot of people want to plan and prepare for that, but they always say, well, it's my house. Some people say, oh, I want to do the quick and dirty and add somebody on my deed. And we can talk about the pitfalls of doing that, questions you should ask when you go down that road. A lot of people say, oh, well, I went to a presentation at the senior center and I heard I should avoid probate and family court because it takes a long time or it's a costly adventure or whatever, so why don't I just add my kid to my deed? And I'm here to tell you, you should always ask a lot of questions before you make any monumental changes with anything that you own as an asset. To me, that is, you just have to talk it out, you have to think it through, and don't just pull the trigger. Stephanie and I can go through a litany of stories. We have story after story of we're problem solvers. When people come to our entities, yeah, they come to record benign, basic documents, and those go swimmingly along. But more often than not, the ones we're going to remember and talk about are the fights and the ones that are done wrong, because those are the ones that are just protracted and take a long time and become a total nightmare. So that's the problem, you know. So we're here to, you know, as Stephanie opened up, talk about the pitfalls. This is what we do all day long. Is we hear the people at our counter saying, "So and so told me to do this," and we're looking at them like, "Well, you're not doing it right." So that's why we're here to be people that are resources for you in that capacity. So your largest asset can be your house for a lot of people. I'll start with my most recent story. So rewind to 2017. My brother lives here in Massachusetts, and his wife grew up in Rockport, Massachusetts, Essex County. Her grandmother is 103 years old. 2017, she was in her 90s, still living independently in her home. She said, I want to do a deed, and I want to deed it out to my 2 grandchildren and my remaining daughter who's still around. And I want to retain a life estate. I spent way too much time sitting with her saying, please don't do this, please don't do this, please don't do this. But lo and behold, she did it. So we deeded the property 25% to one grandchild, 25% to a second grandchild, 50% to her daughter. She's now 103, and she went into a nursing home 4 months ago. This is her largest asset. And you say, but she doesn't own it anymore. She deeded it. I tried to explain to her a life estate has value. Well, as we all know, we've now lived in the last 6 years, and home values have gone through the roof. So her house in Gloucester, Massachusetts is now worth about $650,000. And the IRS chart for life estates has asserted a value based at her age of 103 years old and the value of the house at $115,000. So the nursing home is now coming saying, well, we want you to either sell the house or attach or put a lien on the house because we need that $115,000 to care for her. And she goes, but I got past the 5-year look back period for Mass Health. And I'm like, but you retained a life estate. So those are things that you want to say, well, wait a minute. I thought I did it right. I deeded somebody. But, you know, those are the things where you have to have these conversations and say, what's the, you know, if I cause this to happen, what's the result? It's cause and effect. And those are questions we want people to ask. And that's her largest asset. Yes, it will avoid probate, but it will not avoid Mass Health, and it will not avoid liens because I'm the holder of the liens as well. So.
And Katie had mentioned working with an attorney, so you'll hear us say that several times, that and communicate with your family and complexities of estates. But working with an attorney, if you look at the maroon folder, there's a great reference in there. It's the Worcester County Bar Association Lawyer Referral Service, and that is a great organization that can help you find an attorney who can meet your needs, that you can work with, that you can team up with. Again, it's the Worcester County Bar Association Lawyer Referral Service. You can input some of your information, what you're looking for. You're probably looking for an attorney that handles estate matters. You're not going to want an attorney that handles everything or criminal defense. You want to find the right attorney for you. We also recommend that you work with your friends. Ask them. If somebody you know has already drafted a will and they had a great experience, see who they worked with as an attorney and see if it's somebody that could fit your needs. We want you to ask a lot of questions when you meet your attorney. You have to share a lot of your personal information, your financial information, your family information. You want to be prepared. You want to have thought ahead, as Katie mentioned, with your questions, what you want to happen with your assets. But you're going to share all of this with the attorney, and you want to feel comfortable with that person. You want to feel like they have your best needs in mind, and so you're going to want to make sure you're doing your research and finding the right person that's going to fit your needs.
I think that you have to kind of relate an attorney to like your primary care physician. You're going to talk to your primary care physician about your body. You're going to talk to your attorney about your money. And you're going to talk to them about your family dynamic. And Stephanie has this a little bit more experience than I do on the everyday daily things, but the blended families. I mean, we have stories of second and third marriages. How does divorce impact? How does losing a child to death, predeceasing you, impact it? What about grandkids? Did somebody adopt a grandkid and add them to a will and didn't tell anybody? There's a whole host of things that can come up, and it's really just can be a real mess if you don't think it through and plot and plan it. So that's why we're here to kind of try to promote the proactive. I have this book, which I'm going to pass around, but I'll show the TV folks first. There's probably 1,500, 2,000, 3,000 books online. I did a cursory check, but about 2 years ago, I purchased this book. It's available on Amazon. It's available on Barnes & Nobles. You can go to a Barnes & Nobles. It's one in Leominster still, I think. It's actually a fill-in-the-blank book. I'm not promoting, I didn't write it, I didn't promote it. I just liked this one when I looked through a bunch of them. But you fill in everything from your Facebook account. What's your Facebook identity and what's your password? Is there a legacy for your Facebook? Will it shut down when you die? Can somebody access it? Are you adding somebody to shut down your Facebook account? Who are your credit cards with? Do you have a Macy's charge? Do you have a Citibank Visa? Are you collecting miles somewhere? How do you transfer your JetBlue miles to somebody should you be unable to use them? And then it goes into the deeper things that are a little bit more that what we talk about is where are all your bank accounts? Personally, I think this is great. I'm spending a lot of time with my husband working with my in-laws who are in their late 80s. What if they don't die but go into a hospital stay? Who's paying the gas bill? Who's paying the real estate tax bill? Where is that coming from? Is it an automatic withdrawal from a bank account? Are they writing a check each quarter? Are they paying it on a credit card on an automatic cycle? And when the credit card expires, is there a new one to put on there? What is their system of doing all that? And this book is really kind of a fill in the blanks of this is where all this stuff is. And then I would put this in my safe that I bought at Walmart or Target, because then you're going to have personal information in it with account numbers and all that other stuff. But it's really kind of somebody who says, I'm overwhelmed by what I do in my day-to-day life. It kind of gives you an outline to fill out so that you can say, oh, geez, I never would have thought to put that in there. A lot of times when we do this presentation, people will say, oh, when my parent died, I realized how much work probate is and the forms you have to fill out and how many trips I had to make to Worcester because I didn't understand the first time I filled it out. This is kind of a guideline to kind of give you when you go to the lawyer to say, hey, I'm ready to sit down and talk about planning my future. This will give you some idea, this or another book, will give you some ideas of what information you need to do. I will always say, Stephanie likes this, you're going to pay for a lawyer now, but if you don't, your family's probably going to pay double to fix the mess because they don't know where your paperwork is. And if you want to pay a lawyer or a tax preparer to go through and sort through all your papers, rock on if you can afford that. But they are not cheap. And if you have your organization, your accordion file, or your papers clipped together in the right order, and all your ducks in a row. It's going to save you on the front end and or your family on the back end. So
I love this book. I love that Katie found it. As she'd mentioned, we see all of the problems. And so usually when you're with us in probate and family court, it's not a positive situation. We try to make it a great enough experience for you, but usually there are things that you're trying to sort through, and you obviously need the court system involved in helping you. And so what we see so much of are loved ones trying to dig through the bills and the paperwork and waiting for things to come in the mail and closing out statements and not sure, as Katie mentioned, who's paying the oil bill. And so having any of that prepared and then those conversations with your loved ones in advance is a huge time saver and a huge help in going through the probate process. That conversation of just saying, this is what I want and this is how I've set it up, really can save a lot of time and money and a lot of anxiety and the stress on your family as they're trying to both deal with the death and then figuring out and sorting out an entire estate. This really is a great resource to help you do that ahead of time.
And we commonly say, a theme we have is I had a near and dear friend of mine. I called her my Grammy. She was not my Grammy, but she was my Grammy Alta, and she stopped working at Sturbridge Village at 89, and she passed away at 94. But for her 90th birthday, we had a large gala at the Sturbridge Village, and all of her great-grandchildren, her grandchildren, and all her family and friends came. And beforehand, she pulled me aside and said, you know, I have 18 great-grandchildren, and the oldest one I really have a special relationship with, and I have these diamond earrings. And I want her to have those. What do I do? And I said, well, I've never seen you wear that bling, so you must be keeping them in a safe place. Why don't you give them to her now? What are you waiting for? Then there's nobody to question after you're gone. Was it to go to the first great-grandchild, or was it to go to the first grandchild? Then that's where the fights start, and that's where the lawyers make money, and they come and they duke it out in front of us. And they fight over stuff. So I said, present them to her. Don't make it the pinnacle of your birthday party, but give them to her and explain to her that that was your ultimate goal. And if you have other items, you know, whether it's a statue or more jewelry or a memento or something from your deceased husband, start giving those things out if you're willing to part with them. And that's exactly what she did, is she started having family dinners and started giving things out, and it made everything a lot easier in the long run. And she got to see people's faces, and they lit up when the kids got the item, and she was so very, you know, happy with the whole situation. So there's nothing wrong with gifting in life. Those are things you can ask the lawyers with regards to actual cash gifts, but with physical items and jewelry and whatnot, give it out. That way there's no fight later.
Yeah, gifting in life is the best way to remove something from your estate. And we see so many fights over jewelry. We see so many fights over someone saying, you know, I took care of mom more, and so she would have wanted me to have this more valuable asset. And so another part of that roadmap in your will is be express and direct, and you can leave people out of your will. You want to write that down, or you can very much say, I am leaving them this and only this. The more you can detail and communicate and outline what your wishes are, the less chance that it will go through a bigger fight in the probate court, less chance you're spending more time and money to navigate that. So, you know, anyone can contest something and they can bring their story of how they helped mom in her old age, but any bit you can do to avoid that is super helpful, including gifting assets now.
So to shift gears, we have a cool new program. I actually work for Secretary of State Bill Galvin as my boss, and working with him since I came into office. So just to give you a little bit more background, I'm a private practice attorney that shifted into government work about 5.5 years ago. So it's like an eye-opening experience to me, but I love it every day. But I worked with him because when I was campaigning 5.5 years ago, I was adamant about reintroducing what's called the Consumer Notification Service. We all are probably sick to death of political ads on TV. I'm glad I don't live in New Hampshire. But with that being said, this brings us to the fact that it kind of, when there's a president, specifically a presidential run, they bring up a lot of stuff about deed fraud and these commercials and infomercials, which I've caught wind of, which talk about stealing your home. So I'm very proud of the fact that in the last couple of years, we've brought back what's called Consumer Notification Service, which is a free service for anybody. In the blue folders, and I'll leave some behind with Caitlin here at the Senior Center, we have what's called CNS, Consumer Notification Service, where anybody who's a property owner in Massachusetts can sign up to 3 properties per sign-in and per email address, where you get real-time email alerts if something is recorded on your property. So we get a lot of calls. People will say, oh, I got an email, and they call us, and we're glad to hone our skills on customer service and look it up. But a lot of times they've paid off their mortgage or their home equity line, and the bank has recorded a discharge saying that lien has been discharged in full and the property reverts back to being lien free. And so, but it's kind of fun to do and see what kind of goes on with that. And then we have other people that will call, and you look at stuff and oops, you have an IRS lien. So it's an alert system, and it's really kind of neat how it functions, but it's 100% free. I'm not saying you shouldn't, if you're worried about your other personal data, bank account information, stuff like that. We don't cover that. We only cover your property that's in Worcester County. But a lot of times people will come and say, oh, I want to pay for this. I've gone online, or I've called the number on the TV and it's Home Key Title or LifeLock. Those services run you about $40 a month. They're expensive. And if you're on a fixed income or you have any type of situation going on, you don't necessarily have that extra income. So to shave off those expenses, we'd like to offer that through the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, which is a great service. Well, thank you everybody for participating. We'll sign off. We can stay for questions after if anybody has any. But thank you so much. And if you want anything, reach out to us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.